Hello students, welcome back. Let us continue with the fourth chapter from your textbook Flamingo. The title of the chapter is The Rat Trap. So in our last session we had read that there was a rat trap seller who led a very poor life as his earnings were very low. Now he had to resort to thievery and begging to make both ends meet. The rat trap seller was alone in this world and led a very miserable life. So, he started knitting up various kinds of thoughts. Now, one of these thoughts was of supposing the world, this whole world, as a big rat trap. His views were that the world offers us various types of baits in the form of comforts and luxuries of life. And this in turn traps us into the rat trap of the world, which leads us to various types of miseries. Now, every night this peddler had to search for shelter as he had no home. And what happened? One evening he was offered shelter by an old crofter, and the next morning he stole the crofter's money, which was an amount of 30 kronos, which the crofter had earned by selling his own cow's milk. Now, then to safeguard himself, what the rat trap seller does, he planned to escape, and he chose the path through the forest, which was a secluded one, a secluded path. But soon he found himself trapped in the forest and he wasn't able to find the way out of the dense forest. Now, this is important. At this point of time, he started thinking that how he got trapped in that rat trap. Now, he himself was caught in the trap of the world just like other people. He was fooled by the bait of money, that bait of 30 kronos of the crofter, which he had stolen from the old man's house. Now the forest seemed like a prison full of trunks and branches, and it seemed to him that he would not be ever able to pass through that prison. Now, in the last paragraph that we read, it was about that the rat trap seller could not find a way out of the forest until he laid his head on the ground, and then he heard a regular thumping sound that he realized that these sounds were of hammer strokes from an iron mill, which was a ray of hope for him, that yes, human beings or somebody could be found over there nearby the forest. So he gathered all his strength and started walking with great difficulty towards the direction of the sound. Okay. Let us begin reading from page number 35. Second paragraph. The Ramsau ironworks, which are now closed down, were not so long ago a large plant with smelter, rolling mill, and forge. In the summer-time, long lines of heavily loaded barges and scows slid down the canal, which led to a large inland lake, and in the winter-time the roads near the mill were black from all the coal dust which sifted down from the big charcoal crates. So here the narrator tells us that the Ramsau Ironworks was a large plant, large industry, which had shut down few years ago. Now it had that plant had a smelter. Smelter is a machine in which metals are melted into different shapes. And then it had a rolling mill. Rolling mill, again, it is a machine to roll metals into sheets. And a forge. Forge is a place where this metal is heated and melted. Okay, so this ironworks had a smelter, a rolling mill, and a forge. And then he says that in summer times, long lines of heavily loaded barges and scows slid down the canal. So these scows and barges are flat bottomed boats carrying the material in bulk, which would come down the canal, and it led to a large inland lake for supplying material to the mill. And in winters, the roads turned black. It is told by the narrator that in winters, the roads turned black because of the coal dust that came along due to the transportation of the charcoal crates. Okay, let's read ahead. During one of the long dark evenings just before Christmas, the master smith and his helpers sat in the dark forge near the furnace waiting for the pig iron which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Every now and then one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments, dripping with perspiration, though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. So, on one long dark evening near Christmas time, the master smith and his helper were sitting in the dark forge, which was built near the furnace, and he was wearing a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. So both of them were waiting for the crude iron also, which is also called pig iron. Now pig iron, it is an intermediate product of the iron industry, which is obtained by smelting iron ore in a blast furnace. So both of them were waiting for the crude iron which was put inside the furnace fire to be ready to be put onto the anvil. Anvil, what is anvil? Anvil is a heavy block with a flat top which is used for again shaping the metals. So every now and then they took turns to stir the liquid with the help of a long iron bar, and this liquid was this hot that they could bear it only for a few moments. So they could not bear this hot liquid because it was so hot that it made them perspire. It is written, returning in a few moments dripping with perspiration, though as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt. This we have already discussed, that he was wearing a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. So this liquid was so hot that they could not stand for more than few minutes, and then they returned back all in sweating very profusely. So they would turn by turn go to that to stir that liquid up. Okay, let's read further. All the time there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned and the burning coal cracked. The fire boy shovelled charcoal into the maw of the furnace with a great deal of clatter. Outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick tiled roof. So now we are told that one could hear different types of sounds in the forge, and there was a big bellow which was blowing air in the fire with great sound. So this bellow, it's an airbag that emits a stream of air used for blowing air into a fire. So also, other than this, there was the sound of cracking coal. Now one could also hear the bang of the charcoal which was being shoveled by the fire boy. Now the other sounds which were coming from outside the mill were of the waterfall and the high speed north wind which was hitting the raindrops against the brick tiled roof. Okay, further. It was probably on account of all this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge, until he stood close up to the furnace. Now it is told to us that it was because of these different kinds of or different types of sounds that the blacksmith didn't realize that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge, and it was only when this man stood near the furnace, it was only then when this blacksmith was able to see a stranger. Okay. Surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes, and to come in to warm themselves in front of the fire. The blacksmiths glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. He looked the way people of his type usually did, with a long beard, dirty, ragged, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. So now the narrator says that it was not unusual for the poor homeless people to get attracted to the lights of this forge, which was visible through the window panes. The lights were visible through the window panes, and these window panes are called that these were covered with the black powder of the burnt coal. And now, in order to warm themselves with the help of the burning fire from the furnace, these vagabonds came there into the forge to seek some shelter over there. So, as the blacksmiths were accustomed to such visitors, they were very indifferent to the man. Okay, he very casually looked at him, and the rat trap seller's appearance was similar to that of other wanderers. What was his appearance? He had a long beard, he was all dirty, he had worn old clothes, and he had a bunch of rat traps which were hanging from his chest down. Okay. He asked permission to stay, and the master blacksmith nodded a haughty consent without honoring him with a single word. Now the peddler tried to seek permission from the blacksmith so that he could stay there in the forge for the night. Now the blacksmith allowed the peddler with an very arrogant consent by just nodding his head, and he didn't say a single word to him. Further, the tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk but only to warm himself and sleep. Okay. In those days, the Ramsau iron mill was owned by a very prominent ironmaster, whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible. And at this very moment he came into the forge on one of his nightly rounds of inspection. So after this blacksmith allowed the peddler to stay in the forge, the peddler also said nothing to him, and because his main aim was to warm himself and to spend his night over there. Okay. So the owner of this Ramsau, now we come to know about the owner of Ramsau Iron Mill, that the owner of Ramsau Iron Mill in those days was a very ambitious person whose aim was to sell only the finest iron into the market. Therefore, what he did, he used to keep a check on the workers both during the night and the day, and the owner was, on that day when this rat trap seller was there in the forge, the owner was on a night inspection visit when this peddler entered the forge. Let's read ahead. Naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin who had eased his way so close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. The ironmaster did not follow the example of the blacksmiths, who had hardly deigned to look at the stranger. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. So here we come to know that we already know that the blacksmith avoided his presence, the presence of the rat trap seller, and he allowed him very casually to stay over there. But unlike the blacksmith, the ironmaster who had just entered the forge, what he did? He at once noticed the peddler who was sitting so close to the furnace, Now we come to know here that the rat trap seller was sitting or lying down so close to the furnace that even the steam could be seen. The steam of which was coming out of his wet torn clothes, that could also be seen. Okay. Now this iron master, he not only went near to the rat trap seller, but also removed the wanderer's hat which he was wearing. The rat trap seller was wearing a hat, so he removed the hat that was bent to one side of his face so that he could see the man's face clearly. Okay, so he actually inspected that who was this stranger who had entered the forge. He was attentive. Okay, let's read further. But of course it is you, Nils Olf, he said. How you do look. The man with the rat traps had never before seen the ironmaster at Ramsau and did not even know what his name was. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once. Okay. Now, when this ironmaster took off the peddler's hat, what happened? He mistook him as an old acquaintance of his, okay, and he mistook him as Nils Olf. Now, the peddler didn't know him, okay. The ironmaster, he was unaware about who the person was, nor had he seen this ironmaster any time before. But he thought that if this man mistook him as his old companion, as Nils Olf, and gave him some money out of pity, then it would be a good thing for him. So it was a way for him to earn money. Okay. Therefore, what he did? Therefore, he didn't let him know that he had mistaken him as his old acquaintance as Nils Olf. So he pretended to be Nils Olf now, the rat trap seller. Yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me, he said. You should not have resigned from the regiment, said the ironmaster. That was the mistake. If only I had still been in the service at that time, it never would have happened. Well, now of course you will come home with me. So the peddler started a conversation with the ironmaster by saying that things didn't went well with him lately and he had a very bad time. Now to this the ironmaster replied that Nils Olf had made a very big mistake by leaving his job from the regiment. Further, the ironmaster also added that if he would have been working in the regiment at the time when Nils Olf resigned, then he wouldn't have let him resign from his job. Later, then the ironmaster invites Nils Olf, who in reality we all know that he is the rat trap seller. So he invited the rat trap seller, or we can say Nils Olf, to his own house. Let's read ahead. To go along up to the manor house and be received by the owner like an old regimental comrade. That, however, did not please the tramp. No, I couldn't think of it, he said, looking quite alarmed. He thought of the 30 kroner. To go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away as inconspicuously as possible. So the rat trap seller, he didn't find it to be a good idea to visit the ironmaster's place, as he had been a comrade himself of the regiment. Now he was frightened. The rat trap seller was frightened with the idea of visiting to this manor house, to this large country house of an old soldier, which according to him was not safe because he had stolen someone's money and he had that amount with him and he was in fear of getting caught. Now he didn't want it to put himself in any kind of danger. So the rat trap seller's intentions were, it is said at last that his only intentions were to sleep in the forge and then go away from there without even being noticed. Okay. but he was here at this moment. He was being invited by this comrade to his own house because he has mistaken him as Nils Olf, one of his acquaintances. Okay, let's read further. The ironmaster assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. Please don't think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there. Now he is being very modest over here. He said, Elizabeth is dead. Elizabeth is dead. As you may already have heard, my boys are abroad, and there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We were just saying that it was too bad we didn't even have any company for Christmas. Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. Now the ironmaster was aware of his friend's miserable condition, and he is being very modest over here. He is being very friendly to him, and he says that he is trying to make him feel comfortable by saying that he shouldn't feel embarrassed, or he should feel free to come to his house, as his home was an ordinary one. Now he told him that the ironmaster told the rat trap seller, or we can say the ironmaster told the person Nils Olf that his wife Elizabeth was no more. She was already dead, and added that he must be aware of it because he was one of the old acquaintances. So he is assuming that this person Nils Olf might be knowing about the death of this ironmaster's wife Elizabeth, but in reality this person is the rat trap seller. Now then the ironmaster let him know that both his sons were settled abroad. They were also not at home, so only he, the ironmaster himself, and his daughter were left alone at home. Only these two people were living together at their place. Therefore he invited Nils Olf to celebrate Christmas with both of them, his daughter and himself, so that he and his daughter may have some good company at the feast, Christmas feast. Let's read ahead. But the stranger said no, and no, and again no, and the ironmaster saw that he must give in. It looks as though Captain von Stahl preferred to stay with you tonight, Skenstrom, he said to the master blacksmith, and turned on his heel. So here, though the ironmaster made many attempts to invite Nils Olf, who in reality was the rat trap seller, but the rat trap seller did not accept his invitation, as he was scared of being caught. So at last, the ironmaster says to the blacksmith, whose name is Skenstrom, that Skenstrom, it seemed that the Captain von Stahl, the peddler, wanted to stay with him in the forge rather than staying with the ironmaster at his manor house. Further, but he laughed to himself as he went away, and the blacksmith, who knew him, understood very well that he had not said his last word. Now this ironmaster laughed to himself as he went away from the forge, and as the blacksmith knew the ironmaster pretty well, so he understood that the ironmaster was hiding something and had not said what was in his head. Okay. Further, it was not more than half an hour before that they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge, and a new guest came in. But this time it was not the ironmaster. He had sent his daughter, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than he himself. Now, here it had not been more than half an hour that there was a sound of a carriage which was stopped outside the forge, and there came in a new guest, and this was not the ironmaster. Who was it? It was the daughter of the ironmaster. Now the ironmaster had sent his daughter there in the forge with the hope that she would be able to persuade his friend Nils Olf better than the ironmaster, and she would be capable enough to um, bring him home. This is what he had believed, this is what he had expected from his daughter. So he believed that she was better in persuading others, therefore he had sent her to the forge. Okay. Further, she entered, followed by a valet carrying on his arm a big fur coat. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest and quite shy. In the forge, everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. The master blacksmith and his apprentice still sat on their bench, and iron and charcoal still glowed in the furnace. The stranger had stretched himself out on the floor and lay with a piece of pig iron under his head and his hat pulled down over his eyes. As soon as the young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. The man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open. He jumped up abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. Now, what has happened in this paragraph? The master's daughter entered the mill with her attendant, a valet, who was carrying a big fur coat. Now, she looked very modest. She was a humble girl who was very much shy also. Now, as she entered, everyone was, again, it is told to us that everyone was busy the same way as they had been earlier. Now, it is told then that the blacksmith was still sitting on the bench with his apprentice, with his trainee, and was working on the iron. Now, this girl, the ironmaster's daughter, she went to the peddler and lifted his hat. Okay. What the peddler did? The peddler slept. It is told to us that as soon as the young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. So, she lifted his hat, and the man, it is told that the man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open, because he was all time afraid of being caught. So maybe we can say that he was in habit of sleeping with an eye open. Okay, so here it says that the peddler slept with one eye open, and as soon as she saw her, he got shocked and jumped up. He got up. Okay, so he was quite frightened after seeing the daughter of the ironmaster. "My name is Edla Wilmanson," said the young girl. "My father came home and said that you wanted to sleep here in the forge tonight. And then I asked permission to come and bring you home to us. I am so sorry, Captain, that you are having such a hard time." So here she introduces herself as Edla Wilmanson to the peddler, or we can say to Nils Olf. And she felt sorry. She says that she was sorry to hear about the hard times that he was going through, he was facing. And then she explained to him that she had come here in the forge to take him to her house with her father's permission. Okay. She looked at him compassionately with her heavy eyes, and then she noticed that the man was afraid. Either he has stolen something or else he has escaped from jail. She thought and added quickly, "You may be sure, Captain, that you will be allowed to leave us just as freely as you came. Only please stay with us over Christmas Eve." Now, Edla had sympathy for the peddler, but then she noticed that the reason behind his fear could be either he had committed some robbery, or maybe he has ran up or escaped from some jail. So she said that he was free to leave their house at any time, but she just wanted him to stay with with her family just for the Christmas Eve. Okay, so she ensured that that this rat trap seller or Nils Olf won't be stopped by anyone. He would be free to move out of their house whenever he wanted to. Okay. Further, she said this in such a friendly manner that the rat trap peddler must have felt confidence in her. It would never have occurred to me that you would bother with me yourself, miss, he said. I'll come at once. Now Ella was talking to this peddler in a very nice and humble manner, and it was very new for the peddler, for the rat trap seller, that someone was giving him so much attention. Now, because she was so humble towards him, therefore he kind of believed her in whatever she said, and then he got ready to go with her to the manor house. Okay. He accepted the fur coat, which the valet handed him with a deep bow, threw it over his rags, and followed the young lady out to the carriage without granting the astonished blacksmiths to so much as a glance. But while he was riding up to the manor house, he had evil forebodings. Forebodings means foretelling. Okay, so the peddler then wore the fur coat which was offered by the valet, the assistant of the ironmaster's daughter, and then he started following the lady. Now he didn't even, it is told that before leaving the forge, he didn't even bother to notice the other people in the room, in the forge, who were present over there, the blacksmith and his practitioner, his other colleague. Okay, so on the way to the house, the peddler felt that as he had committed a crime, he would be punished for it. Okay, he was having evil forebodings, which means that because he had committed the crime of stealing money from the crofter, who was a very innocent man and who believed in him, who trusted him and told everything about him, so he would be definitely punished for it. This was the feeling which he was having when he reached the manor house. Further, why the devil did I take that fellow's money? He thought. Now I am sitting in the trap and will never get out of it. So he is regretting here. He started cursing himself that if he had not stolen the money, he would have not got trapped like this. So the money, again, I would like to repeat that the money that he stole was a bait for him, because of which he got trapped in this rat trap. Okay, which led him into a trap. Therefore, he was feeling guilty now. The next day was Christmas Eve, and when the ironmaster came into the dining room for breakfast, he probably thought with satisfaction of his old regimental comrade whom he had run across so unexpectedly. First of all, we must see to it that he gets a little flesh on his bones, he said to his daughter, who was busy at the table, and then we must see that he gets something else to do than to run around the country selling rat traps. Now, the next day, what has happened? It was Christmas Eve. So, both the ironmaster and his daughter were at the dining table, and the ironmaster said to his daughter that they had to do something good for the peddler so that he didn't have to move from one place to another in search of food and everything. Okay, so he wanted a decent job for this peddler, for his acquaintance Nilsolf, and he said that they should try to find some better job for him so that he would not be in such a poor condition as he was currently, and he would not have to sell rat traps all around the country. Okay. Further, it is queer that things have gone downhill with him as badly as that, said the daughter. Last night I did not think there was anything about him to show that he had once been an educated man. You must have patience, my little girl, said the father. As soon as he gets clean and dressed up, you will see something different. Last night he was naturally embarrassed. The tramp manners will fall away from him with the tramp clothes. So, Now, the ironmaster's daughter said this to her father, that it was strange to see that the peddler had been in such hard times, and she was doubtful whether this man had ever been educated or not. Okay, so she is doubtful now. Now, hearing to what his daughter said, the ironmaster clarified that it was due to the poor condition, the bad condition in which he was living in. It was due to that she was feeling this way. And he also added that the man, the rat trap seller, or we can say Nils Olf, would behave differently after getting clean and dressed up. It is said uh, that the tramp manners will fall away from him with the tramp clothes. So, as he'll change the tramp clothes, therefore, he'll also change the tramp manners that he had learnt while he was living in such a poor condition. Okay. Further, just as he said this, the door opened and the stranger entered. Yes, now he was truly clean and well dressed. The valet had bathed him, cut his hair, and shaved him. Moreover, he was dressed in a good looking suit of clothes which belonged to the ironmaster. He wore a white shirt and a starched collar and whole shoes. So, just while the father and the daughter, the ironmaster and his daughter, were discussing about the peddler, this peddler entered. Nils Olf entered the room with the valet. Now, here at this moment, he looked very clean and he had all bathed up and his hair had been cut by the valet. So, the valet got him ready, properly dressed up, and it is told that he was wearing ironmaster's clothes, suit and shoes, which were properly fit. Now, he was wearing a shirt which was starched. It had starched collar, so it was all white and stiff, and also he had worn shoes which were covered, properly fit. Let's read ahead. Just as he said, this door opened and the stranger entered. Yes, now he was truly clean and well dressed. The valet had bathed him, cut his hair, and shaved him. Moreover, he was dressed in a good looking suit of clothes which belonged to the ironmaster. He wore a white shirt and a starched collar and whole shoes. So, just as the father, the ironmaster, and his daughter were discussing about this peddler, the peddler himself entered the room. And now he was truly clean. He was all totally cleaned up and well dressed. The valet had bathed him and chopped his hair and shaved him. So he was looking very decent now, unlike before. Moreover, it is told to us that he was wearing a very good looking suit which belonged to the ironmaster, and he wore a white shirt with a starched collar, stiff collar, and he was wearing whole shoes. Whole shoes means properly fitted shoes. Okay, students, we are going to cover till here only in this session. So, I request you all to go through all the paragraphs very carefully, underline the difficult words, and keep up your doubts for the next session. Thank you, everyone.